Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalrin. Today we're going to take a look at the shamans for our first look. As a shaman, I found them super fun in Legion, super hyped. I really love what happened to Elemental. I love the playstyle of Enhancement, and Resto I had literally zero experience with. So before we get into the video, I do want to showcase you Resto. This is a spec I have the least experience with. Barely healed as is. I have no idea how to real play, just showcasing some of the numbers you're getting for all your healing abilities. It looks like for the most part, you still retain a very strong AoE healing playstyle. Your artifact weapon goes into talents as an ability that you can use, and it has some fun cooldown reduction mechanics depending on how many people you heal, as far as I am to understand. It's a little weird that a lot of more classes are getting a CDR mechanic where it's all about cooldown reduction, and I absolutely love that, as it's something that I really enjoy with Outlaw, but so many classes are getting it, it makes me want to explore it. It's just too bad it's a class that I just don't play at all. Overall, Resto feels okay to heal. I just really healed training dummies. I was not going to go embarrass myself inside of a dungeon. So before this video really kicks off, just wanted to showcase a little bit of what Resto looks like. One of the things that I will say, all the utilities of what a shaman brings apply for restoration as well. So some of the totems and some of the other utilities I'm talking about, yes, you will all be able to see it. Another thing that Resto is getting back is Earth Shield, but as a talent, at least you can use it in PvE, so I don't really know if that's going to help or not. I remember this ability being baseline, having a little chicken nugget hover around people back in Cataclysm, and to have it removed and unstrapped only for PvP was pretty weird. But it looks like they're getting, for the most part, a lot of baseline stuff. Talent like Nature's Guardian is making a comeback, which increases your health when you drop below a certain % of health. Most of your totems are still there. You still have your wall. You have Spirit Wolf as a talent, if you know, the one that stacks up defensive. That's about all I can really say about Resto. I'm coming into the Shaman without ever playing Resto, and I just couldn't really be bothered to learn Restoration, as it's not something I'm probably going to end up playing in the long run. So I'll try to test out other healers, at least in a dungeon, and tell you how they feel, but Restoration is just something I'd never really experienced. But now let's dive into the specializations that I actually do sort of kind of know a little bit about, the Enhancement and the Elemental. Let's first talk a little bit about Enhancement Shaman, and we'll start with the good news, because there are some news, and they're not really good or bad, but I'll explain to you why I think they're good or bad. Enhancement is starting off more or less the same, which is something I was kind of hoping wouldn't happen. I am a huge fan of changes. I love when there's some huge changes for some classes, so there's something new to test out, some new rotation to learn. Whether it's good or bad, I just like changes because something new keeps it from being stale. Enhancement is more of the same on the baseline parts. The rotation of building Maelstrom with Rockbiter, maintaining Flame Tongue, hitting your enemies with Lava Lash and Storm Strike for single target, and Crash Lightning for AoE still maintains to be the mantra of Enhancement. And that's going to be baseline no matter what build you go for talents. That being said, what abilities you want to add to your basic rotation is really up to you. And there's a lot of different playstyles. One of the playstyles that I end up enjoying a lot is this very procky playstyle with an Earthen Spike to debuff the enemy so nature and physical damage are hitting them hard, into a full Sundering to really just smack the enemy for a ton, into an overcharged Lightning Bolt for 40 Maelstrom, and then into back-to-back procs of Storm Strike, even procs of Lava Lash based on talents. And then there's another build altogether that's more passive, just maintaining your Flame Tongue to get Hot Hand procs, where your Flame Tongue will make next Lava Lash cost a Maelstrom and do 100% more damage, again very procky. You have your Forceful Winds talents, which will really work with your Wind Fury attacks, which works really well with your Storm Strikes and back-to-back main hand weapon abilities, and then Hailstorm to add a little bit extra sprinkle of damage, and then Fury of Air just to have a vortex of nature damage at all times, and then you buff your element. Like, there's more than one way to play. But your main rotation will always stay the same. For some people this is good, because you basically play the same way you are in Legion minus your artifact weapon and the artifact weapon benefits. And you really can draw some of those artifact weapon benefits from your talents back into your bars, but not quite in major ways. I don't really know what else you might be losing with Enhancement Shaman. You are losing your wall to be able to self-heal yourself, but no worries, because your self-heal mechanic of Enhancement has gone increased. I feel like if you want to be some kind of an off-heal for a group, unless your Enhancement was a particular build to help off-heal, Elemental did a way better job. But it looks like as a melee hybrid, Enhancement got better for a little bit extra side healing. I felt that pharaohs, monks, and paladins have always been pretty decent when it comes to them just standing still and healing another target if, let's say, the healer can't get to them, whether it's a PvP situation or a PvE situation. And I felt like Enhancement always kind of fell behind a little bit on those kind of mechanics. But right now in BFA, it feels pretty powerful. You have Earth Shield that you can grab for yourself. You can go for a Spirit Wolf in order to give yourself a little bit extra defensiveness. You also have a stun and a lot of other abilities that give you a lot more utility to help your party. So your overall baseline healing for PvP, PvE has been increased, so you have a little bit more hybridness to yourself. Earthen Shield can be used to make you a pseudo rester shaman for a short moment, and there's a lot of just fun, I guess, combinations of abilities to go off from there. Overall, Enhancement feels pretty great, and it feels pretty standard. I feel like you have a little bit extra to yourself to add, and I feel like you will make yourself a great support class overall, whether it's in a PvP or PvE situation, with so many utilities you're able to bring. And I'll talk about these utilities towards the end of the video, just to cover shamans in general, but here I just want to touch a little bit on Enhancement. Now onto Elemental. And Elemental, I'll be honest with you, I was kind of excited about the changes, but when trying them out for myself, I am confused on how I feel. I feel that if you were to take a look at the Shaman, Elemental Shaman in particular, from a PvE or PvP perspective, you're gonna take a look at two different things. How is Shaman different overall? I feel like the current Legion Shaman is very based on procs and all about setting up those setups for yourself in terms of Stormkeeper, then Ice Sphere proc, and getting a bunch of meatballs back to back and building up the Maelstrom for a immediate Earth Shock. I actually been playing so much of BFA, Earth Shock is not nearly as impactful as it used to be. It's just an ability you use to spend Maelstrom now in order to get a different proc, while in Legion it was really big play when it comes to most of your damage. So what is different about BFA Shaman versus Legion? In Legion, you feel a lot more mobile. You have that big leap that you can use whenever you want to. The gust of wind, so you can move around in PvE fights and PvP fights, and keeps you from being too stable, too steady. Being able to cast abilities like Ice Fury or your artifact weapon turns a lot more capability for you to run around and get a lot of insta-cast damage out. And overall, your AoE in Legion is probably superior to most classes, but your single target is kind of okay-ish. It's the best way to put it. In BFA, however, this is different. You end up standing still and casting spells a hell of a lot more often. You just stand and cast. It makes it for a lot more effective when it comes to the damage department, as your damage, I feel like, is a lot stronger when it comes to PvE situations in Legion. Right now, you're just trying to unload as many burst abilities into the enemy as possible. Really, you're just going for Ascendance and pelting the enemy down with meatballs back to back to back, trying to build up a massive burst damage, get most of your damage out in the opener, and then you're just kind of just trying not to end up at the bottom of the charts if it's a single target fight. If it's AoE, however, you're going to be probably towards the top of the fight as long as you don't die or are not forced to just stop casting, because your utility for AoE is insane. In BFA, however, your AoE damage is just as good as a single target, and your single target is improved. So I guess I should say the single target is as good as your AoE damage. Overall, you just standing still and casting a lot more often. That means the mechanics that have to disrupt you make you, spend less time casting, but as long as you just move over a little bit and go back to cast, you're not losing too much damage. In Legion, you can move around as much as you wanted to in a specific build. You weren't really going to be that great on damage past your initial burst, but you were going to be, it depends on your stats and your procs, maybe at least somewhat competitive. Of course, depending on the fight and depending on the situation, the longer the fight lasts, the less damage you do overall. So I feel like the new BFA Shaman on damage and playstyle is more consistent. You're not quite the mobile god with massive AoE, you're kind of just more of a run-of-the-mill caster where you have to stand still and cast, which I feel like is just such different gameplay, but it gets good damage, so I guess that's not bad. Some of the thing I can say is, the talents have a lot of different options of combos. You can't just take a bunch of talents and effects and you can combo them together into some crazy, hilarious, big burst rotation. That's really past that, you don't really have too many things. I'm looking at most of the talents, and there's some of them that simply got pruned. Ice Fury is not as powerful as it used to be. Stormkeeper as a talent is not as powerful as it is currently on Legion, and most of the playstyles really force you to stand and cast. One of the things that I liked about Shaman, which is something what I like about Outlaw, If I really cared about consistency and just standing still and, you know, playing by the rules like everybody else, you're a caster, stand still and cast. I play a mage, I play a warlock. I kind of like how the shaman, even though it wasn't, I guess, the top of the charts for single target as a caster, bends the rules, has a little bit of RNG, doesn't have the best consistency. But if I honestly wanted consistency, I wouldn't be playing Outlaw Rogue in Legion. So I really enjoy that about Elemental Shaman. But with the changes to Elemental, it might make it better for people that actually want to do damage and actually want to have good single target damage in PvE rotation. I feel like this might make them suffer a little bit, depending on honor talents, of course, in PvP, and how if they might even feel miserable to play. And it has potential, almost like Warlords of Draenor Shaman. You remember those when they weren't really moving? Everybody went from a meatball slinging, running around with lightning bolting in Mists of Pandaria, and then into WoD, it's like, I don't see a single elemental shaman anywhere except towards the end of the expansion. It was probably the weirdest experience that I've had, and I'm really hoping this doesn't happen to shamans here. But with this change alone on elemental, I don't think shamans will be in my top 5. There are multiple reasons to play Shaman, like for example, you're the ultimate utility for everyone. Besides you being able to cast Heroism or Bloodlust, which is pretty baseline, Tremor Totem makes a comeback. Then your Stun Totem is baseline. And you still have your Purge, you actually have fairly decent off healing as DPS, and I'm pretty sure you'll have even better healing as a Resto. Maybe even some damage, but not like anything I could honestly test out for myself since I have zero experience with it. Overall, I feel like Elemental and Enhancement both offer good damage, good utility, good healing, whether it's healing others or self, as well as Bloodlust, which I think will be invaluable in most raids regardless. So, Shamans, I feel like we'll have a good spot in BFA, and I feel like if that's something you are interested in playing, you will enjoy it. For me though, Enhancement just didn't have too many changes for baseline rotation, so I didn't really quite find it quite as exciting. And then the changes to Elemental to make it more consistent actually turned me off a little bit. But that's just my personal preference to that. I don't think Shaman, again, will be in my top 5 of class that I'll play, but of course, this is BFA, this is early look, and anything is welcome to change. If I had to rate Shaman, I still would say they had more changes, and I'm more excited to play a Shaman rather than maybe a Mage, since Mage has basically got no changes in BFA. But this is the state of Shamans, and this will be my first impression. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I hopefully was at least fair and thorough with the Shaman, but I don't know, man. Don't think it's gonna be my top 5. Wasn't quite as excited as I was for Warlocks. Wasn't quite as excited as I was for Hunters. I can't really do anything but speak my mind. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Likes are appreciated. Subscribing to the channel is also appreciated. And hitting the notification bell is super, super awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see all of you guys in another video.